Imagine your dad is losing his memory. You finally get him to the hospital, you're totally desperate for help, and you are introduced to someone called a nurse navigator.
Right, which sounds like exactly what you need.
Exactly. You breathe this huge sigh of relief, thinking, finally, someone to guide us through this maze. But what if I told you that Navigator is actually paid to protect the hospital's profit margins? And, well, not your dad.
Yeah, it's a jarring reality to wake up to.
I mean, what if their primary job is to ensure he is discharged as quickly as possible to, minimize the hospital's liability, regardless of whether your family is actually ready to care for him at home?
When families step into the world of elder care, especially dementia care, they really expect a system designed around healing and compassion.
Mm.
But instead, they hit this wall of, cold bureaucracy, endless hold music, and strategic gatekeeping.
And if you don't know how to play their game, that system will quietly bankrupt your family while you're just, too busy grieving to even notice.
Oh, absolutely. It happens every single day.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to really decode this grueling administrative maze. We are pulling from an incredible set of source materials by NAOMI SAADIQ.
Who is often referred to in the sources as Auntie Naomi.
Right, or Charlotta. And we're looking at her methodology, which is called the Abundance Blueprint. To anchor all these strategies, the sources introduce us to a protagonist named Arthur.
Right, Arthur.
He is a devoted father, a former neighborhood anchor, and just a true pillar of his community. But Arthur is now facing a dementia diagnosis.
And his children are, of course, stepping in to protect him. But they are quickly realizing that the cognitive decline is really only half the battle, right?
Yeah, the other half is an administrative nightmare.
Exactly. It's suffocating them under this massive mountain of diagnostic papers and omission notices. So they aren't just losing their father. They are literally drowning in systemic noise.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the Abundance Blueprint is essentially a masterclass on how families can, stop drowning and start outmaneuvering this broken system.
It really is.
And the very first step, before Arthur's kids even touch a single piece of paperwork, is a complete overhaul of the language they use.
Yeah, that is the foundational philosophy Auntie Naomi teaches. She calls it the language shift.
The language shift.
Right. You have to move your mindset from the sterile corporate clinic back to the warm human environment of the kitchen table.
I would like that.
Because the clinical system relies on language that reduces a human being to a trackable metric.
Yeah.
Charlotta's strategy actively rejects that clinical jargon in a process she calls bringing dignity back to the dirt.
So let's look at the specific translations the sources provide, because the contrast is honestly stark. In the hospital's database, Arthur is categorized as a geriatric, or simply a patient. But in Auntie's blueprint, the family must exclusively refer to him as a senior hidden treasure.
The terminology just completely redefines the subject. A patient is, well, a liability that needs to be managed and eventually discharged.
Yeah.
But a senior hidden treasure, that is a human being with a legacy that requires fierce protection. The sources also point out how the blueprint translates case management into the wraparound family shield.
Wraparound family shield? That sounds so much more protective.
It does. And perhaps most importantly, what the medical system writes off as palliative or end-of-life care, Auntie Naomi rebrands as non-palliative care navigation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, explicitly focusing on protecting the living quality of the person rather than just, waiting for the end.
Let me push back on this, though. I mean, if you are a family staring down a terrifying diagnosis and you're totally exhausted from caregiving, this sounds a bit like a psychological comfort blanket.
I could see why you'd say that.
Does calling Arthur a hidden treasure instead of a patient actually change the quality of medical care he receives? Or is it just making the grieving family feel a little better?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the vocabulary you use actually dictates the entire power dynamic in the room. This isn't about feeling warm and fuzzy. It is about establishing authority.
Okay, how so?
When you walk into a clinical setting and accept the titles of patient and case management, you are implicitly agreeing to let the hospital dictate the timeline, the care plan, the rules of engagement. You are adopting a passive posture. You just sit in the chair and wait for the doctor to tell you what happens next.
It's like walking into a courtroom and letting the opposing counsel act as your translator?
Yes, exactly.
You've already forfeited your agency before the negotiation even begins.
Precisely. So by adopting the language of the wraparound family shield, You are signaling to these massive institutions that the family is the ultimate authority. You stop asking for permission to coordinate your father's care, and you start directing it.
You shift from playing defense to playing offense,
Exactly.
which is absolutely critical because the moment you step onto the battlefield, you are met with operational gatekeepers. And the sources detail just how quickly Arthur's cognitive health is slipping. I mean, time is not a luxury his kids have.
No, not at all.
Yet they are immediately locked out by HMO versus PPO network rules. They are dealing with missing referral codes just to get him in front of a cognitive specialist and spending literally hours on hold.
And that friction is by design. The system demands that the family act with extreme urgency, but the bureaucracy moves at a glacial pace. If you just call the HMO and, ask for a referral to be expedited, you're treated as a nuisance.
Right, they just put you back in the queue.
Exactly. You're just another complaint.
But the abundance blueprint doesn't accept the queue. It teaches families how to weaponize the system's own network rules to force the HMO to move at the speed of the family's crisis.
Yes.
And I want to dig into the mechanics of that because it sounds almost impossible for a normal person to do. How do you force a massive insurance company to hurry up?
You do it by understanding the regulatory triggers they are terrified of violating.
Oh, interesting.
HMOs operate under very strict internal compliance mandates and state-regulated grievance timelines. If you understand the fine print, you don't just call and complain. You legally initiate a formal grievance or cite specific compliance statutes regarding continuity of care.
So you use their own rules.
Right. The moment you pull those legal triggers, their internal risk management protocols kick in. They are legally mandated to respond and resolve the issue within a specific window, often 48 to 72 hours, rather than the standard 30 days. You are literally using their own regulatory framework against them.
You are speaking their native language of liability.
Precisely.
And while Arthur's kids are trying to navigate these insurance hurdles, they encounter the person we mentioned at the top of the deep dive, the billed nurse navigator. In the sources, there's this incredibly frustrating moment where this so-called navigator doesn't even pronounce Arthur's name correctly off the chart while his family is completely overwhelmed.
Wait, a nurse navigator sounds like exactly who you'd want on your side. Are you saying they're actually an adversary to the family? Well, titles can be incredibly deceptive. You hear nurse navigator, and it implies that this professional is navigating the chaotic waters of the healthcare system on your behalf.
Right. That's what I would assume.
But you always have to look at the financial architecture. Who signs that navigator's paycheck?
A hospital.
The hospital does. Therefore, clinical navigation is engineered to protect the hospital's metrics. Their definition of a successful navigation is getting Arthur stabilized enough to be discharged quickly, ensuring the bed is freed up, and preventing a readmission that would penalize the hospital financially.
Wow. That is a fundamental conflict of interest. The hospital's financial goals are actively competing with Arthur's long-term well-being.
Which is why the blueprint draws a hard line in the sand. It urges you, as the listener, to demand the difference between a clinical nurse navigator and a professional, culturally aligned support coordinator.
So a support coordinator is different.
Very different. A true support coordinator works exclusively for the family. Their only key performance indicator is the protection of your household.
Yeah.
They know Arthur's history, they understand the cultural nuances of his care, and they aren't bound by some corporate discharge quota.
Because once the hospital discharges Arthur, the clinical team just wipes their hands clean, but the family's real crisis is just beginning.
Exactly.
The sources dive heavily into this under the concept of social determinants of health, or SDOH.
Right. SDOH is a public health term for the non-medical factors that dictate a person's health outcomes. We are talking about safe housing, reliable income, access to nutritious food, and social isolation.
But SDOH is a very sterile academic way to describe survival. Auntie NAOMI translates this into something far more urgent. She calls it the 80% reality.
The 80% reality.
Yeah, it's the rent, the groceries, the peace of mind, the fundamental dignity of the elder. Arthur's family gets hit with a massive wave of sticker shock when they realize what long-term care actually costs.
Because Medicare and private insurance are designed to cover clinical interventions. They will pay for the cardiologist, the MRI, the prescription medications. But they do not care about the household budget.
Right.
They almost never cover the daily non-medical custodial care that a dementia patient requires. They don't pay for the adult daycare so Arthur's kids can keep their jobs. They don't pay to have the bathroom modified so he doesn't slip.
I think of the medical system as an iceberg.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
The doctor's visits, the clinic, the prescriptions, that is just the visible tip of the iceberg poking out of the water. That represents maybe 20% of the situation. But the 80% reality, the relentless daily cost of keeping Arthur safe, fed, and supervised at home, is the massive chunk of ice lurking underwater.
Exactly.
And if a family doesn't map out a financial safety net for that 80%, that invisible ice will completely tear the hull out of their financial ship.
That analogy hits at the absolute core of the crisis. If the family's household bleeds out financially, trying to sustain that underwater 80%, the clinical care at the top just becomes irrelevant.
It totally collapses.
Right. If Arthur's kids go bankrupt, lose the house, or destroy their own physical health trying to provide 24/7 care, the entire structure falls apart. The clinical team can prescribe the best cognitive medications in the world, but if Arthur loses his safe environment, his dignity is gone. Mapping out the 80% gap isn't a secondary priority, it is the prerequisite for survival.
So the obvious question is, how do you protect that 80%? Because if the system isn't going to help you and, in fact, is throwing up roadblocks, you need a defense mechanism.
You do.
The sources call this ultimate solution building the wraparound shield. And the core requirement for this shield is absolute legal perfection.
Let me illustrate why that perfection is necessary. The sources describe a scenario where the family receives a cold, automated omission notice. A vital care document or an insurance claim is flat out denied.
Just denied out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And when they investigate why, it wasn't because the care wasn't medically necessary. It was because a single signature line was left blank.
A single blank line on page 12 shuts down the entire care plan. That is infuriating.
It is the bureaucracy functioning exactly as designed. It is an automated sorting system looking for any technicality to delay or deny payment. If you give them a crack, they will exploit it.
Wow.
So the blueprint solution is to build that wraparound shield long before the crisis reaches a boiling point. You have to secure the power of attorney, the HIPAA waivers, the advanced healthcare directives, and you have to execute them with airtight legal precision while your hidden treasure still has the cognitive ability to sign them legally in front of a notary.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the strategy Auntie NAOMI is teaching completely shifts the paradigm of caregiving. It sounds like the goal is no longer just to be a loving child surviving a medical crisis. The goal is to literally out-bureaucrat the bureaucrats.
Yes.
But if I'm a listener right now and I'm already exhausted just trying to get my dad to eat his breakfast, how on earth am I supposed to transition into a legal compliance expert?
I mean, it sounds daunting, which is why Auntie NAOMI codified it into a concept she calls the SGB2B standard. That stands for boardroom game meets bedside manners.
Boardroom game meets bedside manners.
Yes. Think about how a Fortune 500 company protects its assets, right? They have compliance officers, standardized operating procedures, and rigorous legal reviews.
Right. They don't mess around.
Exactly. They don't rely on hope. They rely on infrastructure. The SGB2B standard teaches families to adopt that exact same enterprise-level rigor to protect their community. You cannot fight a multi-billion-dollar healthcare corporation with just love and good intentions. You will lose.
You need a system.
You fight them with airtight legal documents and an intimate knowledge of their own compliance rules. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you force corporate structures to respect and fund non-clinical community care.
There's a line from the sources that perfectly encapsulates this. It says, "We aren't corporate, we are protected." It's about taking the cold, ruthless efficiency of the boardroom and using it to build a fortress around the kitchen table. And when Arthur's kids finally execute this blueprint, when they stop relying on the hospital's navigators and become the navigators themselves, when the documents are legally flawless and the 80% reality is financially mapped out, the transformation is profound.
The panic dissipates. The relentless barrage of administrative firefighting just stops. And what they are left with is the space to actually be a family again.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right?
Exactly. They can sit on the porch, hold their father's hand, and focus entirely on preserving his legacy. They have handled the administration, which allows them to reclaim those quiet, profound moments by the bedside.
But you only get the privilege of that quiet bedside after you have built the shield. So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
The ultimate takeaway is a harsh but necessary truth. The healthcare system is engineered for clinical efficiency and risk mitigation. It is absolutely not built to protect your household budget, your peace of mind, or your family's legacy.
No, it's not. You cannot outsource the protection of your loved ones to the very institutions that view them as a metric. You must step in as the system navigator for your own hidden treasures.
And if you are currently in the trenches of this, or, if you know this season of life is approaching for your parents, the sources emphasize that you do not need to reinvent the wheel.
That's the most empowering part of this deep dive. Auntie Naomi has made these practical resources available through her Patreon. You can find it at linktr.ee Abundance Blueprint 777. The blueprint provides the exact homemaker and companion guidelines, the rigorous document checklists you need to achieve legal perfection, and health literacy fine print guides.
It's all right there.
It gives you the boardroom infrastructure so you can stop staring helplessly at emission notices and start actively defending your family.
It truly empowers you to shift from a reactionary state of emergency to a proactive state of execution. And connecting all of this to the broader arc of our lives brings up a very crucial realization. As a society, we spend our entire adult lives obsessing over the accumulation of wealth. We meticulously plan our retirement accounts, we maximize our 401ks, and we consult wealth advisors to ensure our financial independence.
Oh, for sure. We plan endlessly for the peak of our lives.
But this raises an uncomfortable yet vital question to leave you with today. We plan for the wealth, but do we ever plan for the administration of our decline? If you suffered a cognitive event and became a hidden treasure tomorrow, who in your life right now is legally equipped, financially prepared, and trained to fight the boardroom game for you?